John 9, the man who was born blind. John chapter 9 is one of the most skillfully told stories in the Bible. It is built like a play in 7 short scenes, and the central character is a man who is never given a name. He begins the chapter blind and begging. He ends it worshiping. And in between, he is interrogated twice by the religious authorities, disowned by his frightened parents, and thrown out of the synagogue, all for the crimes and being able to see. Running alongside his story is another one, moving in the opposite direction. The man questioning him begin the chapter confident that they can see everything clearly. They ended being told that they are blind, and in their guilt remains precisely because they insist they are not. The double movement is the whole chapter. One man's sight increases while another group's blindness hardens. And the difference between them is not intelligence or education or religious devotion. It is what they do with Jesus. Who sinned? The chapter opens with a scene and a question. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciple asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Notice first, what the disciples see is a theological problem. A man is sitting there begging, and their instinct is to work out whose fault it is. That instinct isn't ancient and it is stubborn. It assumes a TD universe in which suffering is always a direct output of a specific sin. It is the reasoning of Job's friend, and the book of Job exists partially to demolish it. And yet here it is again, in the mouth of the disciple, framed as a multiple choice question with only 2 options. There is an added absurdity in the first option. He was born blind. How could he have sinned before he was born? Some rabbinic speculation entertained the idea of prenatal sin, and the disciples seem willing to consider it because the alternative, that the suffering has no such explanation, it is not on their list. Jesus refuses both options. It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the work of God might be displayed in him. This is one of the most important things Jesus ever said about suffering, and it needs to be heard carefully in both directions. He's not saying that these people were sinless. He's not making a general statement that sin never has consequences. What he is denying is that direct causal chain the disciple assumed the specific affliction as punishment for that specific sin. That link, he says, is simply not there. And this is worth setting alongside something he said in chapter 5. When he told the healed man at the pool to sin no more, lest something worse happen. Read in isolation. That sentence has sometimes been used to teach exactly what chapter 9 denies. Here the matter is put beyond doubt. There are people who suffer terribly and whose suffering is not a verdict. What he puts in place of blame is purpose, that the work of God might be displayed in him. He does not offer an explanation of the past. He announces what is about to happen. We should be careful here as well because this can be turned into something glib, as though every hardship comes with a TD justification we can identify. Jesus is not handing out a formula for interpreting other people's pain. He is saying something about this man in this moment and what he is about to do. Then we must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. The light of the world is about to give sight to a man who has never had it. And there is a shadow in the sentence too. Night is coming, his time is limited, and he knows it. Go, wash in Siloam. Having said these things, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva. Then he anointed the man's eye with the mud and said to him, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam. It is a strange, earthy action, and it is worth noticing what it evokes. In Genesis, God forms a man from the dust of the ground. Here, the one through whom all things were made kneels on the dirt and makes something with his hand. And the man who was incomplete from birth is completed. It is a strange, earthy action, and it is worth noticing what it evokes. In Genesis, God forms a man from a dust of the ground. Here, the one through whom all things were made kneels in the dirt and makes something with his hand. And the man who was incomplete from birth is completed. And then John does something he rarely does. He stops to translate a place name, Siloam. He tells us means sent. That is not a stray piece of trivia. Sent is one of the great themes of this gospel. Jesus says over and over that he was sent by the Father, and he does the will of him who sent him. That his food is to accomplish the work of the one who sent him. John pauses the narrative to make sure we hear it. The man was washed in a pool called Sent by the one who was sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. That is the entire miracle. 3 verses. And it is the last time in this chapter that Jesus appears until almost the end. The healing is over quickly. The controversy takes up the rest of the chapter, which is exactly how John wants it, because he is interested in what happens to people after the light shines. Is this not the man? The neighbor cannot agree on what they are looking at. Some says it is the beggar they have seen for years. Others says it merely resembles him. The man himself keeps saying, I am the one. There is a small irony in the Greek. The phrase he uses is ego eimi, the same word that carries such weight when Jesus speaks them. Here they are simply a man insisting on his own identity, while the crowd argues over whether he is who he says he is. They ask how his eyes were opened. His answer is exactly as much as he knows. The man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, Go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed and received my sight. Where is he? I do not know. Remember that answer. It marks the starting point of what will become remarkable education. The first interrogation. They bring him to the Pharisees, and John drops in a detail that turns a healing into a crisis. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Making mud could be classified as kneading. Applying, it could be classified as anointing. Under the traditions that had grown up around the Sabbath command, this was work. And crucially, the man was not in danger of dying. He had been blind from birth, and one more day would have changed nothing. So this healing looks, to a careful observer of the tradition, entirely gratuitous, which raises a question the chapter never asks directly, but everywhere implies. Why does Jesus keep doing this on Saturday? He is not careless. He's making a claim. As chapter 5 says, his father is working and so is he. The Pharisee asks again how he received his sight, and the man's answer is getting shorter. He put mud on my eyes and I washed and I see. Then the division begins. Some said this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. Others said, how can a man who is a sinner do such signs? And there was a division among them. Schisma again, the same word from chapter 7. The tear is now running through the leadership itself. They turned back to the man. What do you say about him since he has opened your eyes? And he takes his first step. He is a prophet. Ask him. He is of age. Unable to resolve it, they summon the parents. The questioning is careful and legalistic. Is this your son? Do you say he was born blind? How then does he now see? The parents answer the first two questions and refuse the third. We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But how he now see, we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of his age. He will speak for himself. John explains why. They were afraid because the authorities have already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Christ would be put out of the synagogue. That phrase carries more weight than it may seem. Expulsion from the synagogue was not merely a religious inconvenience. It meant social and economic exclusion from the life of the community. Many scholars believe John records this so pointedly because his own first readers were facing precisely that pressure decades later and needed to see it dramatized. And here is a small, sad picture of what fear does. Their son has been blind since birth and can now see. It is the best day of their lives, and they will not celebrate it in public because the cost is too high. They hand him over. He is of his age. Ask him. He is about to be left completely alone. And he will do better alone than they did together. One thing I know, they call him a second time, and now the interrogation drops any pretense of inquiry. Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner. That opening phrase was a formula used to press someone to tell the truth under oath. But listen to what follows it. They are not asking him what he knows. They are telling him what the verdict already is and inviting him to agree. His answer is one of the great sentences in the gospel. Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. He refuses to testify beyond his knowledge. He will not be pushed into a theological judgment he is not equipped to make. But there is one fact he will not surrender for anyone, and it is the fact rooted in his own body. They press him to repeat the story again, and now his patience gives out. And he becomes briefly magnificent. I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? That is not a safe thing to say to the man who can expel you. And he keeps going. They reviled him. You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from. And the man, a beggar with no education, no standing, no training in the law, delivers a piece of theological reasoning that is unanswerable. Why? This is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinner, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and he does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of the man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. Notice the structure of it. It argues from a premise they themselves hold, that God does not answer the prayers of the wicked, and from a fact they cannot dispute. And the conclusion follows without any gap. Their claim not to know where Jesus comes from, which they intended as a dismissal, becomes the very thing he uses against them. They have no answer, so they resort to insult and force. You were born in utter sin, and would you teach us? There it is, the disciples' assumption from verse 2, now weaponized. Your blindness proves you are a sinner from birth, so your testimony is worthless. And they cast him out. Jesus found him. And then the sentence that changes everything. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, Jesus found him. And then the sentence that changes everything. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? Jesus went looking for him. The man has just lost his religious community's standing and probably his family's protection, all because of a healing he did not ask for. And the one who healed him comes and finds him in whatever strait he has been thrown into. The man's answer is honest and eager. And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you. There is a beautiful precision in that. You have seen him. The first face this man ever saw is now telling him who he is. Lord, I believe, and he worshipped him. The verb is prosekinesen, to bow down to worship. And Jesus receives it. That detail matters. Devout Jewish teachers did not accept worship. Angels in Scripture refused it. Jesus does not deflect it. Now look back how far this man has traveled in a single chapter, and at what drove each step. The man called Jesus. Then under pressure, he is a prophet. Then under harder pressure, if this man were not from God, he could do nothing. And finally, having lost everything, Lord, I believe. Every stage of this growing sight cost him something. It is a picture of what confessing Christ actually looked like. It is not a smooth ascent, but a series of moments where telling the truth becomes more expensive and telling it anyway makes you see more clearly. Those who see. Jesus draws a conclusion aloud. For judgment I came into this world, and those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. Some Pharisees standing nearby hear it and ask, with what sounds like a genuine indignation, are you also blind? His answer is one of the most sobering sentences in the Gospel. If you were blind, you have no guilt. But now that you say we see, your guilt remains. Read that slowly. Blindness itself is not a fatal condition. The fatal condition is claiming to see. The man born blind was healed precisely because he had nothing to defend and no sight to claim. The people who could not be helped were the ones certain they had no need of help. This is the chapter's final and hardest word, and it lands nearest to the religiously confident. A person who knows they are in the dark can be given light. A person who insists the lights are already on will refuse to offer every time. And it leads directly into chapter 10. they cast the man out of the fold. In the very next breath, Jesus will begin talking about a shepherd who calls his own sheep by name and leads them out, and who lays down his life for them. How this chapter reveals Christ. He is the light of the world, not as a slogan, but as a demonstration, giving sight to eyes that had never worked since the day they were formed. He is the sent one, who sends a man to a pool named Sent, so that no one misses where the healing came from. He is the creator, kneeling in the dust, completing a body that had been incomplete from birth. He is the one who receives worship without correcting it. And he is the shepherd who goes looking for a man who was thrown out, which is the most tender thing in the chapter, and the thing most easily missed. Trace the order of grace and it could not be clearer. The man did not ask to be healed. He did not know who Jesus was. He was not consulted about the mud. He obeyed the instruction he did not understand and came back seeing. His confession grew after his sight was given, not before. And when his faith finally reached the point of worship, it was because Jesus had come and found him. Every single movement in this chapter begins on Jesus' side. Final reflection. The chapter began with a question about blame and ended with a question about sight. The disciple wanted to know whose fault the blindness was. The Pharisee wanted to know whose side the healed man was on. And in the middle of all that questioning stood a man with nothing to contribute except the fact he could not deny. I was blind, and now I see. He lost his synagogue for it. He was disowned in public by his own parents. He was insulted as a sinner from birth by the most respected man in the city. And then he was found, not by his defender, because he had none, by the one who had made the mud. Those who know they cannot see are given sight. Those who insist they see keep their blindness and call it clearly. That is the judgment this chapter announces, and it is still the dividing line. One thing I know, I was blind, but now I see.